Canada and the United States are caught in a growing diplomatic storm, and the tension is reaching new heights. At the center of the controversy, a massive $13 billion deal for F-35 fighter jets, a purchase that Canada is now considering scrapping altogether. This unexpected move has thrown everything into chaos. But is Canada really walking away from the agreement? Or is this a bold bargaining chip in a much larger trade dispute? It all started with a series of economic pressures from Washington. The U.S. has hit Canada with tariffs on steel and aluminum, slapped extra taxes on agricultural goods, and tightened trade policies. In response, Ottawa seems to be hitting back hard, threatening not just the F-35 purchase, but also rethinking its entire military alliance with its powerful neighbor. The stakes are high, and key Canadian leaders are speaking out. Prime Minister Mark Carney and Defense Minister Bill Blair have hinted at a major shift in policy, but what exactly does that mean? Could Canada be turning to Europe for its next-generation fighter jets instead of relying on American-made aircraft? This isn't just about planes, it's about power, leverage, and Canada's long-term strategy. For nearly 2 years, tensions between the two countries have been brewing, largely fueled by U.S. trade policies. The previous Trump administration had already imposed tough tariffs on Canada's automotive and steel industries, leading to heated debates in Ottawa. These disputes have left Canada wondering, should we really be this dependent on a single supplier? The question has become even more urgent as the U.S. continues to apply pressure, with Washington warning that if Canada doesn't adjust certain trade quotas, key agreements could be up for renegotiation. And now, the fallout is unfolding in real time. Canada is making waves with a decision that could reshape its military future. The government is now seriously considering walking away from its long-standing deal to buy American F-35 fighter jets. What's behind this sudden change? It all comes down to trust, or rather, the lack of it. In a revealing interview on March 12th, Prime Minister Mark Carney didn't mince words. Canada must realize it can't rely on the U.S. for everything. Maybe it's time to rethink the F-35 project. His remarks set off alarm bells, and when Defense Minister Bill Blair had echoed the same sentiment, the big question in Ottawa became, is the F-35 deal about to collapse? The timing couldn't be more interesting. On March 14th, just hours after being reappointed to his role, Blair addressed the press on Parliament Hill, confirming that Canada is actively looking at other options. The country is now engaging in talks with global aircraft manufacturers, signaling that it may shift away from American jets altogether. All eyes are on Europe. Some defense analysts speculate that Canada could opt for fighter jets like the Eurofighter Typhoon or France's Dassault Rafale, both of which have been under consideration before. Back in the early 2010s, Canada briefly debated these alternatives but ultimately stuck with the F-35 due to its deep integration with the U.S. military. But times have changed. Tensions between Washington and Ottawa have made Canadian officials rethink their dependence on a single supplier. Instead of putting all its eggs in one basket, Canada is exploring new partnerships, and that could lead to a major shakeup in its defense strategy. Canada finds itself in a tough spot, so close to the United States that relying on American military technology has always seemed like the natural choice. From spare parts to maintenance, working with the U.S. just made things easier. But now, things are changing. For months, Canadian leaders have been pushing back against the idea that they have no other options. Yes, the U.S. is our biggest trading partner, they've told reporters, but that doesn't mean we have to go along with everything they say. And it turns out European defense companies are listening. Aircraft manufacturers across the Atlantic are making their pitch. The Eurofighter Typhoon team is emphasizing versatility and affordability, pointing out that while their jet may not be as stealthy as the F-35, it's easier to maintain and still highly capable. Meanwhile, Dassault Aviation, the makers of the Rafale, are arguing that their aircraft can handle Canada's harsh winters with ease. Of course, the F-35 isn't just any fighter jet. It's one of the most advanced in the world, equipped with stealth technology and already in use by major U.S. allies like the United Kingdom, Australia, Italy, Norway, and Denmark. Canada initially wanted in on this elite club, hoping for seamless military cooperation and shared logistics. But now, with tensions rising, that plan is looking less certain. Many in Ottawa believe that trade disputes, tariffs, and years of diplomatic friction with Washington have made the U.S. a less reliable partner. More and more voices are asking, why should we spend billions on American-made jets if Washington isn't treating us as a true ally? With influential figures like Mark Carney backing the idea of a pivot to Europe, the conversation is gaining momentum. And let's not forget what's at stake: $13 billion and 88 aircraft. The plan was for Canada to receive its first F-35s by 2026, with the goal of replacing its aging CF-18 fleet by the early 2030s. But if this deal collapses under U.S. pressure, Ottawa will have to find a new supplier fast. That's easier said than done. Scrapping an agreement of this size would mean starting over, conducting fresh evaluations, negotiating new contracts, and ensuring whatever jet Canada chooses is actually up to the task. At the same time, there's a bigger question looming over this debate. Does it really make sense for Canada to break away from its most powerful ally? But frustration is growing, and the pressure to act is stronger than ever. Canada's trade battle with the U.S. is heating up, and now a high-stakes defense deal is caught in the crossfire. After Washington slapped new tariffs on Canadian dairy and steel, Ottawa pushed back hard, straining relations between the two countries like never before. Now, the once secure plan to buy F-35 fighter jets is hanging by a thread. If Canada does walk away from the deal, what are the other options? Europe has already stepped in, offering alternatives. The Eurofighter Typhoon, built by a partnership of the UK, Germany, Italy, and Spain, is a strong contender. France is making its case for the Rafale, while Sweden is promoting the Gripen as a cost-effective, reliable choice. But here's the catch: none of these European jets match the F-35's stealth capabilities. The F-35 is a fifth-generation fighter, designed for advanced warfare, while the European alternatives are fourth or 4.5-generation models. Canada originally chose the F-35 because it was seen as a major leap forward in air combat technology. Still, politics and public opinion may end up playing a bigger role than pure military specs. On the morning of March 15th, Defense Minister Bill Blair hinted that Canada might rethink the deal, saying, "How we are treated by our trade and defense partners affects major decisions. We might need a plan B." That same day, the foreign minister issued a warning of their own, stating that if U.S. tariffs continue, Canada will seek alternatives in key strategic areas. The local media in Ottawa ran with the story, with bold headlines speculating that Canada was preparing to say goodbye to the F-35. While no official decision has been made, one thing is clear: the possibility of cancellation is very real. Meanwhile, reports from Washington suggest that the U.S. Department of Defense is watching the situation closely. According to leaked information, American officials are deeply concerned that if Canada backs out, it could damage relations between the two allies. Canada is a crucial partner in the F-35 program. We hope they won't walk away from such a significant decision, one Pentagon source was quoted as saying. But what would shifting to European aircraft actually mean for Canada? For decades, Ottawa has worked closely with Washington on defense, making American technology the backbone of its Air Force modernization plans. Now, the question is whether Canada will break from tradition and look across the Atlantic, or even invest in growing its own defense industry. Behind closed doors, European nations are eager to strike a deal. French officials are pushing the Rafale, while others are lobbying for the Typhoon or the Gripen. The big unknown? How will this impact Canada's relationship with the U.S.? And could it shake up transatlantic ties as well? Reports from Washington warn that if Canada dares to walk away from the F-35 agreement, there will be consequences. Expect a harsh response, an American media outlet cautioned. But for Ottawa, this isn't just about buying planes. It's about rethinking its entire defense and trade strategy. Behind the scenes, Canada has been inching toward Europe for years. There's growing talk of strengthening free trade agreements with the European Union. deepening defense ties with the United Kingdom, and even co-developing weapons systems with France and Germany. Some experts argue that Canada's reliance on the U.S. has left it vulnerable, especially in times of economic and political tension. Post-NAFTA, we've been backed into a corner every time a crisis hits, one Canadian analyst explained. It's time we chart our own course. If the F-35 deal collapses, it would be more than just a defense decision. It would send a loud message to the world. Canada is choosing Europe over the U.S. Public sentiment seems to be shifting in favor of cutting ties with the American deal. Many Canadians, still frustrated by U.S. tariffs, are cheering for a bold move. We won't cave to pressure, some say, no matter the cost. Of course, not everyone agrees. Critics warn that canceling a $13 billion agreement would hurt Canada too, both economically and militarily. But for now, the dominant view seems to be that aligning with Europe makes more sense than bending to U.S. demands. Washington isn't taking this lightly. On March 16, 2025, U.S. officials issued a stark warning. These decisions will hurt Canada more than they think. They'll pay a heavy price. So what happens next? Some believe that cooler heads will prevail and that this is all just political posturing. Others argue that Trump thrives on confrontation, meaning this standoff could escalate even further. Diplomatic back channels are buzzing. Every few days, Prime Minister Mark Carney and Defense Minister Bill Blair release statements, sometimes hinting at a compromise, sometimes doubling down. According to inside sources, Ottawa will make its final call within the next 2 months. Possible outcomes? One scenario sees Canada scrapping the deal, triggering new U.S. tariffs and retaliation. Another envisions a last-minute agreement where both sides find common ground. But the real twist? This debate isn't just about military contracts anymore. Trade, diplomacy, and even national security strategy are now on the table. And that leaves one big question. Will Canada hold its ground, or is this all just a high-stakes bluff? European manufacturers are already making their pitch, promising modern, capable fighters that could replace the F-35. But can they truly match the advanced stealth and technology that the U.S. offers? Who knows? In just a few weeks, we might wake up to headlines announcing Canada's official withdrawal from the F-35 program, or maybe we'll see a shocking reversal. Trump backs down, tariffs lifted, crisis averted. The situation is moving fast, and at this point, anything is possible. What do you think? Is Canada really going to walk away, or is this all part of a grand negotiation strategy?